Hi everyone, Rix here, and we're going to continue on with the drawing of Robert Downey Jr. In this video, we're going to focus on the hair. Okay, to start off with, I'm going to use charcoal powder. This is just one option, and other options is you can just use a charcoal pencil if you like. It really doesn't matter. But what I want to start off with is a base. What a base is just the underlying tone. It's just to make sure that you don't have any white of the paper showing through when it's all said and done. Now, of course, if I want to pull out some highlights in the hair later on, which I'm going to want to do, that I'm not going to have any problem doing it because you don't put the base on, rubbing it hard into the paper where it can't be erased off. So certainly don't worry about that. So anyway, I'm just using a Q-tip here, and it's going to take a little bit of time for me to apply this base of charcoal powder. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and send this into turbo mode, also known as time lapse, so that you don't have to sit here and watch me just cover one little inch of paper every hour. Now I like to point out here, if you'll notice, that I'm kind of applying this charcoal kind of in a direction of where the hair is flowing. This is not necessary, but it's something I like to do. It doesn't hurt anything. It's just kind of give it a little feel of which direction the hair is going to be flowing and so forth as I'm putting down the base. But it's up to you whether you want to do this or not. Okay, now the goal here for dark hair is to apply charcoal. And so I've got here a soft charcoal pencil. Gunk on it is optional. And I'm going to just start darkening the areas for the whole head of hair here. And as soon as I'm done with that, then I can start pulling out the highlights, which is really how you're going to make the hair itself appear to show up. So this is a very, very long process. Um, Even though I'm sitting here drawing things in the direction that I'm seeing the hairs go, it's really going to be pretty much just black, as black as I can get it with this pencil, and then I'll use even a darker one following this. So again, this is going to require time lapse because you're really not going to learn anything just watching me do it in regular speed, because I just want to cover the whole head of hair. So we're going to go right into time lapse. Okay, now you'll notice that I'm drawing in the directions that I see the hair flowing as I'm applying the dark charcoal. Again, this is just something that I do, and I'm going to mention that I do it. However, again, it's really not necessary to do it this way. Again, what you want to do is you just want to get yourself a nice dark charcoal pencil, and you just want to fill that area over the base tone with the dark charcoal. And then following that, we're just going to blend it in somewhat with a brush, kind of a soft uh, paintbrush type of thing, and then just go and do it all over again. Now, here's something else that I tend to do, and I've done it in my other video on how to draw dark hair, and that is I go in really hard in those areas that are pitch black. So if you look at the reference photo there, you'll see that there are areas that there's just, I mean, there is no light in there whatsoever. It is just pitch dark. And I'll often just go in there and really darken that area up as I go along. But it's still too early for, these details for the most part. It's just, I'm a kind of a goofy guy, and that's just the way I do things. But I do want to let you know that you don't have to do it. You just need to cover up this whole area here with soft, dark charcoal, because later on I'll show you how you can, pull the hair out from that big black mass of charcoal. Okay, now I'm coming in here with, I tried one brush, I didn't like it, so here I'm going with another one. This is a softer brush, and you can see I'm just blending everything in with the paintbrush, soft tip brush. And this is definitely something that's important to do, and you just want to keep blending that in. And in this case here, you can see all these strands and everything because of the way I chose to do this. But you'll see later on, it's really not necessary to make all the hairs showing up. At this stage, it's more of a cartoonish type look, so just bear with me. It will develop as we continue on. Now I do want to point out that I've picked up an even darker and softer charcoal pencil that I have, and it's called the Primo. Really love that pencil because it can get really, really dark. Not as dark as my carbon, but it is a very, very dark charcoal pencil. Now you might notice that even though I'm applying my darkest charcoal pencil, that I'm going to actually not focus so much on the areas where the highlights would be, even though if I get a little on there, that's fine. Uh, it's not a problem because I can pull it out, and I'm going to pull the highlights out later. But I just figure that, hey, if I already know that highlights are going to go in a certain area in the hair, why add more charcoal in that specific area that I'm going to end up just having to pull out anyway. So that's just something that I do as I'm going along with the hair. decided to use a little sponge blender here because it kind of lightens up some areas as you're blending. So I cover up some of the white paper that's still shining through, but at the same time, it allows me to lighten up the hair in areas where there is some light. Okay, now I pulled out this extra hard charcoal pencil, General's extra hard, just to see about drawing some stray hairs and so forth. Um, and as I'm doing that, some of it comes out okay, as you can see, and I want to get some fine hairs in there, but overall, I didn't like the pencil for this particular application so much, and so I will come back with other pencils such as the 9XXB or a fine point on my dark charcoal pencil and just lightly fling my wrist so that I can make the stray hairs appear here, which is very important for details. Okay, with a Q-tip, I'm doing some blending now. Just like anything else, I draw, I blend, I draw, I blend. So here I am, I'm blending now. Remember, every time you blend, you lighten up. And since I need to get this hair as dark as possible, um, I've got to put more charcoal back on. But right now, I'm going to focus on some highlights. I'm using a Tombow mono eraser pen, and just start getting the little highlights that will kind of show direction of the hair locks, um, kind of bring some details out without really drawing a lot of detail, which I really like about drawing dark hair, is that you really could just have a mass of darkness up there, and then you can lighten parts up with your Q-tip, and you can lighten up other parts like strands of hair with your uh, fine point eraser. Now, in a different video, I talked about tonal value, and you need to have, the whatever tone is next to the area that you're trying to determine the tone has a big effect with whether you're going to be able to see it. And here I can now see that the forehead is a little too dark on the right hand side there. And I'm going to take a chamois here because a chamois is good for smoothing and lightening up areas. And as you can see, it just pulls that graphite off, not all of it, but it lightens things up. And I'm going to kind of get a little bit of the shape of that lighting area on the forehead there. I'll come back later and fine tune it, but for right now, just generally, you can see I'm lighting up the forehead to get it closer in tone to the reference. And the whole idea here is, because I have the dark hair now applied to my drawing, I can see I went a little too far on that right side of the forehead. So I'll be going back on it again even later, before this video is over. Here I'm just going to go ahead and check the tone again because the eyes can definitely play tricks. Okay, I'm going to sharpen my charcoal pencil here and use that point to do the fine hairs. Like I mentioned before, I didn't like the extra hard charcoal pencil, so I'm going to use my very dark Primo here, but just use a very light touch. The sideburns area there, or that's not actually sideburns, but the side of the forehead. Lightening up some areas with my kneaded eraser here. But just want to get a few stray hairs. Then I'm going to go right back into darkening areas within the hair that I see are dark in the reference photo. And again, here I am blending. Okay, and you can see that as I'm blending and then coming in and bringing out highlights, this so-called once cartoonish looking hair now is developing and it's taken on a more realistic look to it. Here I'm using my Tombow mono eraser. Do the same thing. I'm pulling out highlights and I'm just going to look at the reference and look at where the highlights are. And yeah, and you want to get a sharp point on that mono. That's what I was just doing there is with the X-Acto knife, was cutting a nice point on it. But the more you can pull out the little tiny highlights and try to mimic what you see in the reference, the more realistic your drawing is going to appear. If you take too much creative license and kind of just make up things as you go along, it can get away from you and not have that realistic look to it. So, do try to put things in its exact place that you see in the reference photo. So if you'll notice, I come in here, I put dark areas where I feel that there's dark right next to light areas, and it really brings it out. It's all about contrast. Okay, I'm going to come in here with my blender, my paper stump blender, because there are areas where I want really, really dark black, and I'm getting white speckles of the paper showing through. So I'm blending it with the blender, and then I'm coming back in here with the darkest charcoal pencil. Now notice that I'm concentrating on the blackest or darkest areas, I should say, of the hair and getting that drawn in the same exact areas that I see in the reference. Now the real key to making it look like photorealistic hair is the use of pen erasers or a fine sliver of an eraser. Now I'm using a pen eraser in this case, and notice that I'm creating the look of the hair by actually pulling the graphite off. So it's a matter of going back and forth between using the dark pencil and then pulling out the highlights. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the blackest black I possibly can for the background. I need this to be even darker than the hair itself, so that like the photograph that I'm drawing from, that I've decided to actually draw exactly what I see on that photograph, which means that includes the very dark background. It needs to be very, very dark, and yet you need to be able to see the hair within that very dark background, just like you can in the photo. And so in this case, I'm using the General's carbon pencil, which is the darkest black that I have, even darker than any charcoal pencil in my possession. And as you're going to see as you watch the rest of the video here, you're going to be able to see the hair, even though the hair is black and very dark and the background is very dark. Meanwhile, though, I know I'm going to start making a little mess here, so I'm blocking it off with some tape. It peels off real easy. It's just drafting tape. You can get a really weak painter's tape, works the same. You want to be able to pull it off and not tear your paper. But if you look like that photo was really dirty on the back, and I'm just smearing it, so I decided to tape things off so I can have a nice border, just like I have in the reference photo, as I go ahead and draw in all this carbon. Now, because I decided to use that carbon pencil, it's going to be very easy for me to smear this drawing as I'm trying to finish it. I went ahead and decided to spray some workable fixative on here just to minimize the smearing. But usually I don't do it until the drawing is done. But in this case, I just went ahead and added that in there. Well, that concludes this video on drawing dark hair. I hope you picked up some pointers from this video. You can see that I still have a ways to go to finish this drawing. But now with the dark hair and the dark background in place, I can now adjust the tonal values of the skin even more so as I continue to draw the other eye, the nose, the mouth, and the rest of the face and so forth. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.